Hey guys, it's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 Week 15 preview. So it's hard to believe that we're actually on Week 15 already now. It was a stuttering start to the season, but we really are pushing on. This week we will see another 12 fixtures to keep your weekend very much jam-packed of Overwatch League action. And this week we will also see an interesting hero pool with Mei, Tracer, Orisa and Moira all banned, which is really going to shake things up, I think. And I think we might see more Echo now we're missing Tracer in that dive. We might see more Sombra Echo dive, but who knows? Who knows what these teams have been scrimming over the past week? Anyway, let's get into the fixtures that we are going to see for this weekend. And on Saturday, May the 16th at 9 AM British summertime, we will see Seoul Dynasty taking on Chengdu Hunters. So, on paper, this is a very, very easy game for the Seoul Dynasty, or should be. Chengdu Hunters were a team that got swept by the London Spitfire last week. And it is that on paper, but when you look at the hero pool for this week and you see that Mei is missing, and you see that Orisa is missing, and you see that Tracer is missing, that is all the heroes that really shone for Seoul Dynasty last week. Perhaps not so much the Orisa, but the Tracer and the Mei. Both of those comps they run, the Mei Death Ball-y comp and the Tracer Sombra Dive, they ran them last week against Shanghai to great success. And both of those comps will not be able to be run this week, which means that they will have to be inventive and find something else to play. If we do end up going towards a Sombra Echo dive, then yeah, we all know how Seoul looked on the Echo a couple of weeks ago, so that's not going to be a great look. And I'm not sure really if there's anything that just completely substitutes him for Mei. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Seoul Dynasty come out with this week. And it's going to be a big test, I think, for Seoul Dynasty this week. Despite it being against the weakest team in Asia on paper, it's going to be a very interesting test for Seoul Dynasty, and they're kind of lucky with how the fixtures have fallen, in my opinion. But at 11 AM, straight after that game, we're going to see the London Spitfire against the Shanghai Dragons. So, London went 1-1 last week, sweeping the Hunters, and then losing 3-1 to the Guangzhou Charge. Guangzhou Charge were very good last week, and London fought, but they weren't good enough, and they were very slow. Now, Shanghai, we all know how good Shanghai are. Yes, this is going to be a weird meta week possibly, but Shanghai are very flexible and I expect them to come out on top in a lot of metas. I don't think London are going to have enough to get anything out of this match. Anything other than a 3-0 I think is good for London. If they can make this close, then that would be very, very good. And something we have to remember, although it was much, much earlier in the season, week 1, that they actually took the New York Excelsior very close. But again, things have developed since then, and things are actually very, very different. So, I wouldn't expect anything but a 3-0 for Shanghai Dragons here, but anything better than that is possibly a good result for London, depending on how they look and how they play. But, moving on to 1 PM, and we will see the New York Excelsior taking on the Hangzhou Spark. So, Hangzhou Spark have got an interesting week this week. New York Excelsior should be a very winnable game for them. They should be better than the Hangzhou Spark. But New York Excelsior did have a wobble last week against the Guangzhou Charge. But I don't think this Hangzhou Spark team is anywhere near on the level of the Guangzhou Charge. So I would expect New York Excelsior to be fairly dominant in their display of the Hangzhou Spark here and get a 3-1 victory, if not better. But again, Hangzhou, it's all about the small and little incremental improvements. And if they can take New York Excelsior close here, then I say that's a good result for Hangzhou Spark. So if they can take maps off of New York Excelsior, it isn't bad from a Spark point of view. It would be a miracle if they won the match, in my opinion, because I think New York Excelsior have just got too much quality for this Spark side. So now we move into the later North American games, and at 8 PM on the Saturday, we will see Vancouver Titans taking on the Houston Outlaws. Vancouver. So they lost to Washington last week, they lost to Florida last week, and I don't expect that to be changing anytime soon. Yes, Houston Outlaws are not the best team in the league, but let's be honest, Vancouver are one of the worst. They're probably below Washington now, considering what we saw Washington do to them last week. So we're talking about Vancouver being the second worst team in the league. There's going to have to be a very, very big improvement week on week for Vancouver Titans to get anything from this Houston Outlaws match. I think the DPS of the Houston Outlaws is going to have too much. I think the tank line of the Houston Outlaws is going to have too much. Honestly, Meko could run absolutely roughshod over this Vancouver Titans side, and then the supports are also very good for Houston. I don't see anyone But the team from Texas coming out on top here. So I will give Titans some credit and say 3-1. But it's not going to be that close, I don't think. Moving on to 10 PM, and we will see Florida Mayhem taking on Washington Justice, the two teams that faced Vancouver last week. So Florida Mayhem have been steadily improving, and we must I don't want to be down on the Florida Mayhem here, but we must take that with a pinch of salt. They have had a very nice run of fixtures in recent weeks, with games against the Boston Uprising, the Vancouver Titans, new look Vancouver Titans, and now Washington. That's a very favourable fixture list, and to be quite honest, Florida should be able to go up until the May tournament not losing a match. And that involves winning against the Washington Justice here. So I would expect Mayhem to win against the Washington Justice. Also, there is a caveat for the Washington Justice this week. They have to sign a DPS before the weekend starts, because Stratus is now gone, Corey's now gone, they're left with Tuba. That's it. So they need a DPS, and that could make a big difference depending on who they sign. If they sign anyone big, if they go and really splash the cash, let's say, then they could really improve things. But also they could go the other way and pick up, not a mediocre player, that's harsh to say, but nothing too flashy, and then still be the same old Washington Justice. But the Florida Mayhem have got a very good squad, and the only thing that is down on the Florida Mayhem this week is the hero pool that I think is slightly harsh on Yaki. It'd be interesting to see if they move towards the Echo or something like that. But I would expect Florida Mayhem to get a victory over the Washington Justice. Something like 3-1 would make sense to me. But at midnight, we will see Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Boston Uprising. Gladiators, you will not get a easier match than the Boston Uprising in your life. So take very, very good advantage of that. Boston Uprising have a slightly new looking roster right now. I say slightly new, it's only one change. Bruson is taking a break from Overwatch and therefore has left Boston, and they have brought in a brand new off-tank player. He goes by the name of Punk, and he is Australian. He's actually got dual nationality with Australia and the United States, and he comes in from the Uprising Academy. I say he comes in from the Uprising Academy, he actually left the Uprising Academy in December, so he hasn't really been playing all that much, which I guess fills Boston Uprising fans with a massive amount of optimism, I guess. He featured for the Australian World Cup squad in 2018-2019. Yeah, that's about it. Not exactly a blockbuster signing for the Boston Uprising, and not a signing I expect to change their fortunes all that much. The Gladiators should have way too much quality for this Boston Uprising side, and anything but a 3-0 is a very, very bad display from the Gladiators in my opinion. There are very few teams in the league I expect to be dropping maps to the Boston Uprising. Possibly only one. Yes, I'm looking at you, Titans. But moving on to 2 AM, we are now on the Sunday, obviously. This is San Francisco Shock taking on the Atlanta Reign. One of the probably closer matches of the weekend, I would say. Atlanta Reign, though, they're not looking quite as brilliant as I thought they would be. I mean, when at the start of the season, a lot of us were saying, well, this Atlanta Reign squad is going to be like top 5. It's not that. Let's be brutally honest. It's not a top 5 team right now. It could get there, but the San Francisco Shock have really found form now. They have really, really found form. Yes, it was pretty close between them and Toronto Defiant last week, but I think that was Toronto Defiant improving rather than the San Francisco Shock getting a lot worse. And at the end of the day, the clutch factor was still there for the Shock. What the Shock are absolutely known for the past 1.5, 2 years, going back to the start of 2019. So I would expect the Shock to come out with a victory here. But Atlanta Reign have the quality to make this very close. So the Atlanta Reign shouldn't go into this match fearing the Shock. If it was someone like Boston, I'd be saying, yeah, they're going to get absolutely walked over, and they should be going into it fearing the Shock, you know. But Atlanta Reign can match the Shock if they play their very best. And again, it could come down to heroes and hero pools. And actually, I think it actually benefits Atlanta more this week anyway. But there is the possibility that we see the Rascal Echo. which is something that I think the whole league is afraid of. But I'll leave that there. I would say a 3-1 victory for the Shock, but Atlanta Reign could make it closer. But moving on to the Asian games for the Sunday at 9 AM BST, we will see the Guangzhou Charge taking on the Chengdu Hunters. Now, if the Guangzhou Charge are anything to go by from last week, they should get a very, very easy victory over the Chengdu Hunters. Because, well, Guangzhou just looked so darn polished last week. One thing we have to remember is they did rely a lot on the Sombra Tracer dive, and there is no Tracer this week. But I think Nero can easily pick up another hero, like an Echo, to just basically negate any problems they would have. So, thanks to Nero's incredible flexibility, I think Guangzhou Charge are looking really, really good. And Eileen can stay on that Sombra that he was really good with last week. And Chengdu Hunters I don't see having an answer for what Guangzhou Charge can roll at them. So, I would say a 3-0 is realistic for the Guangzhou Charge, but Chengdu Hunters, I think, have the ability to take maps. Very often it depends on the day with the Chengdu Hunters, but it hasn't really been working for Chengdu since week 8 or so. They did get a 3-0 victory over Shanghai Dragons, we must remember that. But that's actually a lot of weeks ago now, so yeah, Guangzhou Charge should get a fairly easy victory here. At 11 AM, we're going to see the Hangzhou Spark taking on the London Spitfire. So, London, if I was them, I would be concentrating more on this Hangzhou Spark match than the Shanghai Dragons match. And I know that sounds really weird to say, but London have been a team before to, and other teams have done this, to put a lot of effort into the very tough game and then take for granted the perhaps easier game on their schedule in the week. And I think it's a problem for some teams. I had this opinion in the first week when they took on New York Excelsior and Paris. They really did very well against the New York Excelsior, made it very close at New York's very own homestand. So that's incredible. But then they got absolutely stomped by Paris. It was a completely different looking team, and it looked like they'd really prepared for New York, but not prepared for Paris. So I would rather London, it's kind of going for points you can almost guarantee, if you see what I mean. And if they really prepare for this Hangzhou Spark squad, they will get the win over the Hangzhou Spark. Because London, you can see the coaching in action for London. Some of their rotations, some of their decision making in game can be absolutely fantastic. At times it does fall apart, but you can really see where the coaching has impacts at times. Whereas I think London all round could get outbeat by Shanghai in terms of mechanics, in terms of coaching. So it's going to be a tough one. It depends what these teams have done during the week. On paper, it's going to be very close. I would say a 3-2 victory for the London Spitfire is realistic, but I also think a 3-2 victory for the Hangzhou Spark is realistic. I also think 3-1 victory for the Hangzhou Spark is realistic. So this will tell us whether London are the second worst team in Asia or the third worst team in Asia, in my opinion, because we already know that they were able to sweep the Chengdu Hunters. But now we will move back to North America. And at 8 PM BST, we will see the Dallas Fuel taking on the Paris Eternal. So, this is a match I've actually wanted to see for quite a while, because we know the Paris Eternal can be very good. They got a decent 3-1 victory over the Los Angeles Gladiators last week. So we know that Paris Eternal are one of those teams that are trying to hunt down the top pack, but are not quite good enough right now. I know that's brutal, but there are some very nice reinforcements coming in for Paris later down the line. But Dallas Fuel, they're a bit of this enigma right now, where they've got really good DPS. We think they've got a decent tank line, but it doesn't always show up. And then the DPS are decent, the supports are decent, sorry. But are Dallas the real deal? Are Dallas the real deal? Can they really be a play-ins team? Can they hang with teams like the Paris Eternal, like the Los Angeles Gladiators? And this is the first test of that. Now, I actually think the Dallas Fuel DPS line in this match will be better than the Paris Eternal one, because remember, Paris are missing XZ due to neck issues, due to medical issues, and they're also obviously not able to use Sparkle yet, which means they are limited to Nico and Soon. I think Doha and Decay would be better than Soon and Nico. So it'll be interesting to see how Dallas Fuel use that. It'll also be very interesting to see what sort of heroes Dallas Fuel run. But Paris Eternal are obviously I think they've got the stronger supports and tanks. So yeah, it's going to be whether Dallas Fuel, I think, can get not carried by their DPS, but their DPS can do well, and their tanks and supports can step up enough to give them a victory over Paris Eternal. But I think they can make it very, very close, and I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that Dallas take the W here. I don't think that's really out of the realms of possibility, but then again, Paris Eternal have a lot of quality, and Hambin on the off-tank especially stands out to me over Note. But the shining light for the Dallas Fuel is how close they took the Philadelphia Fusion last week. They did make a very good game of it, so I think this will be a close match, but if I was going to make a call on it, I would say 3-2 to the Paris Eternal, but it could go either way. I'm hoping for a close match here either way. At 10 PM, we will see the Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Vancouver Titans. Now, we talked about things being close. This is probably going to be anything but. There probably couldn't be any more of a skill gap between these two teams unless Fusion were taking on the Uprising. So I would be very disappointed if the Fusion didn't get a 3-0 here. Let's be honest. Fusion, this is like, just don't. Play Chipser. Just play Chipser. You'll get a 3-0 even if you play Chipser. Just play Chipser. Just do it. Vancouver Titans, they got Dalton and flippin' Sooner. Come on now. Play Chipser. Do it. Now, at midnight, the last match will be Toronto Defiant taking on the Los Angeles Valiant. This is an interesting one, because before last week I would have said Los Angeles Valiant hands down. But the performance shown by Toronto Defiant against the San Francisco Shock last week, I don't know. Cruz could be making the difference for this Toronto Defiant squad. He could be that leader that they've been looking for. They did say they brought him in for his shot calling. So he could make the difference for the Defiant here and allow them to get a victory. And actually, I think they will. I actually think they will. My only problem with the Defiant is their over-reliance on Shore and it's very often a problem because when Shore can't get a flank angle or something and pop off, the Defiant don't seem to be able to get in the space to pop off. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. And the DPS of the Valiant are very good. And I think the supports have actually done much better than expected for the Valiant this season. So, this again could be a really close match. But I think I will give it to the Toronto Defiant ever so slightly, 3-2. But it's gonna be close. It's going to be close. There are a lot of possibly very close matches this weekend. Spark versus Spitfire, Fuel versus Eternal could be close, Defiant versus Valiant, Shock versus Rain. There's a lot of scope for possibly very close games this weekend. So hopefully we get to see a lot of really good Overwatch, and we get to see a lot of varied stuff because there should be a lot of different comps on show. I'm hoping anyway, because of the interesting hero bans this week. But I am going to leave it here for this one. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.